Good evening. Call the March 18th Finance Committee meeting to order. Stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight we have basically just schools. It's a big one. So Mike or Dr. Bayetta?
Thank you, Vanna. Appreciate that. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to come before you. I know that you've received our new budget book that you have before you, and as always, if there's questions I can't answer tonight and we need to get back to you, just give us a few days and we'll get that information back to you. Members of the school committee that are here, Matt Wells, our school business administrator, is also here. Just a couple of general comments I think that are important about what's going on right now at the State House as it pertains to public education. We have some significant bills that are very helpful to the town of Norton, and we have some bills that give us a big goose egg. Basically, it's a $25 per student, which is the House one. Currently, the governor's budget is about $54,000 to Norton. 161 communities, including Norton, are receiving 1% or less in the governor's budget. 86 communities between 1.01% and 4.99%. 52 communities seeing between 5 and 10% increases, and 18 communities at 10.1 or higher, including Abington, Arlington, Ashland, Avon, Barnstable, Dedham, Holbrook, Norwood, Seekonk, to name a few. Those are pretty significant and drastic changes that have to do with both increases in enrollment, but also free and reduced lunch and our ELL populations, two areas that we don't necessarily see a direct growth with. Working with the Mass Teachers Association and our local Norton Teachers Association, of which Shannon Taylor, the union president, is here tonight, the school committee, myself, and the union agreed to communicate with our elected officials that a bill that proposes a $600,000 in Chapter 70 increase to Norton is a great assistance to the town and its taxpayers in terms of what we should be receiving. And the mathematical calculation is based upon this is what Norton should have been receiving for the last decade and hasn't because of the lack of change in the formula. The formula is definitely going to change. There is no doubt. It's just a matter, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, how many communities get left behind. And that's a big concern that we have out in the suburbs, and to be quite honest, especially in this area of the state. The 495 belt going into southeastern Massachusetts area is a big concern for all of us because we're not seeing those big gains as part of some of these proposals. Most of the 161 communities that are on that list of 1% or less are in this area of the state. So that's concerning for all of us as we look into this budget. And of course, as Mike knows, who knows when this budget is actually going to get done by the State House. I would anticipate that although they have a June 30th, I wouldn't be shocked if there's supplementals this year as they're trying to really try to figure out what this potentially means in Chapter 78 if it comes to fruition. Our budget reflects for you that you have in front of you increases in class sizes projected in every grade. We will be in the 24 range in K to 8. We prefer 22 range, as you know. And we'll be adding more class sizes of 28 at the high school than we've had before. And that's solely based upon, as you probably know from our budget proposals, that many of the positions, et cetera, that we've had in prior budgets are not reflective in this budget. We've targeted a couple things differently, which I think is important. Our budget increase, which is on the summary page, let me just get myself there as well so it makes it easier for everyone else. Our summary page budget request includes the cover page that talks about 3.8 mandated positions, 2 paraprofessionals, it's on my cover letter, 1 transitional specialist, and a 0.8 speech language pathologist assistant. And then the general education is a targeting around health and music and the network technician that we would like to reinstate. So that's a reinstatement of health, a reinstatement of music, and a reinstatement of the network technicians that have been cut through the years. In the budget summary page, you'll see that the mandated special education, ELL 504s, et cetera, has a increase on the budget of 3.70%, which, to be quite honest, is a pretty good increase, pretty marginal increase, and general education at 2.87. Within the line items, those are more, 11% for special ed, 4.28 for general education, and it reflects a total 6.57% increase. Level services, yes?
What is the percent increase on cost center?
So that would be the increase just within special ed versus within the budget. So within the line item of special ed, it's 11.2%. But to the bottom number of the overall budget, it's 3.7%. Okay?
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. A level services budget is 5.81%, and that would mean elimination any of the general ed requirements, but keeps the mandates, keeps the transportation increases, and all the other increases that are exactly that. They're increases to maintain the level services that we have. That number wasn't in there, so that's the number. If you take a look at the budget increase summary, section 2, so for the public record, our teacher's contract, paraprofessional contract, and confidential employees contract is at 2.5%, and our custodial is at 2%, and administrative assistants are at 2%. So it's 2 or 2.5 in terms of contractual increases. If you go to the bottom where you see mandates, those would be the 3.8 positions I just spoke about in special education. The music, wellness, tech, school to careers program within our high school, which actually is a contractual services, it's not a position, that we own, is 235, so total increase of 365. We have currently 5 announced retirements. One of them will be a cost savings, 4 of them will not, and I'll tell you why. They are dual French-Spanish at the high school. That is not going to be a 60,000 position for us to fill. It's just not, because the candidates aren't available, if you will. They're not out there. And then 2 positions are special education. Again, those won't be your 55 to 60,000 positions. We do have an elementary position that's budgeted where we see actually one of our biggest savings, because we know we can hire in the 50 to 60 range in that account. We have 3 leaves of absence for next year that save us $118,000. The way that works is we do not use the teacher scale for that, because they are not paying members of the teachers union. These are staff, highly qualified, fully licensed, but they're on an independent contract for the year, and they don't take out dues and are protected by the association, so on and so forth. And that's because the position actually is a single position. In this case, it's 3, but the position belongs to the union. That English position belongs to the union. So we're able to, that person takes a career leave for a year, or even just a health leave for the year, let's say, and we backfill it, and we save ourselves pretty good money in those particular cases. Contingencies, this is where we reduced as well, really taking a look at things like the floating position that you've heard me talk about in the past is not in this budget. It's zeroed out within this budget. The areas of looking at potential resignations, looking at what we're hearing about potential people moving and how we can shift those monies, that's where you see this line item. We're trying to be as accurate to what we're hearing, what we're being told as possible, so that we don't earmark that money during a budget process. If you flip to the next, it's expenses. In general, they're pretty modest increases. Transportation is a $75,000 increase. That is a educational guess. Here's where the numbers are coming in. As low as 3% increase and as high as 17% increase in the area. 75% is a little over 9. We basically just looked at our last few years, and we are taking an educational guess that $75,000 will cover the buses. Added to that, we used funds through the school committee for the purposes of hiring a consultant. That person is now looking at various options for us, including, you'll see an article, I believe Mike has agreed to as well, is it in the special or in the regular?
It's in special.
Right, which talks about looking at 5-year contracts for both the town and the school instead of 3-year contracts. Very beneficial potentially to us, because it takes the cost over 5 instead of 3 years. Potential for us to go out together, which we're thinking of doing for things like plumbers and all of that. And instead of doing 3-year contracts, doing 5-year contract, but that requires a town meeting vote and a change to the way you do business. That's also potentially a saving for us. An area would be technology as well. Again, just taking that cost and going over 5 instead of over 3, and especially the economy is good right now, so they say. So that potentially has some benefits where we could just stay with the costs instead of seeing these 8, 9, and 10% increases.
Excuse
Yep.
me, where do we find that?
So- So under the expense line item in terms of the, oh, you're talking about the article? I don't think that article's come forward yet from Mike.
We got something here tonight, but that doesn't specify 5 years. It just says any length of,
Exceed 3 years.
3 to 5.
it says it can exceed 3 years, but it doesn't say limited to 5. So that's why I was wondering if there was another article.
No, there isn't. That's the article. We sent it up as a request based on transportation. That's how it came about. And I don't know if Mike has gone through legal counsel's process that he typically does with,
Right back.
yeah, hasn't heard back.
I don't mean to interrupt this now. I think we need to discuss a number of things related to this at some point.
Just maybe jumping the gun a little bit, does the union have to approve that change from 3 to 5 years? If it's voted, if it's approved at town meeting, does the union still have to approve it?
It's just for procurement items. It's not for salary items that
Oh,
belong
okay.
to us.
Oh, well, again,
So-
the way it's phrased to us, it doesn't say that.
Okay, again,
That would take care of my greatest concern.
right.
Me too.
So it's going through the, to Paul, to your comment, it's going through the process, and I mention it now, and I apologize for bringing it up since it hasn't gone through legal counsel's process, but that's the intent, so I'm just putting it out there. We broke up this budget after all of that into 2 basic presentations of the budget line items, as we said we were going to do, and I think it's important for us to have some discussions about what this means in general, and then more specifically, what it means to our budget. We're going to have to find the funds within the operating budget of the general education budget, if you will, the general operations budget, in order to face meeting the bottom line in mandates. We don't have a choice. So if today the FinCom is announcing it's a 3% increase of the school budget, I have to find 0.7 to the mandate of the bottom line, and I've got to find the other 2.87 within this budget. That's not going to be something that's not going to be anything except for wheeling and dealing within the budget. And, you know, we respect that there's only a certain amount of funds. We understand all of that, but just as a reminder that we didn't receive level services last year. And that's a concern for us because, as you know, at the end of last year, through your kindness and town meetings, we had to backfill with special education as well, which we added to our budget. If you remember, I stated that we added and put a placemaker in special education for $300,000, which we've already gone through. Just so we're that one student away again for the remainder of this year, that one cost imperative that can are negative to the budget, positive for the perspective of servicing the students. So you already know how the circuit breaker works, and so we have now begun the process, as if you remember 4 years ago, when we started to build our special education programs internally. We now have every specialized program at the LGN, JCS, Hay, middle school, and high school. So we have a feeder system, if you will. Now, that doesn't mean a student still can't go out of district. We're at 38. We've been maintaining 38 to 41 over the course of the last few years. That could be an age in and age out. But in terms of the actual students, it's been 38 to 41 has been where we've been, and we've been pretty lucky after starting last year with some significant numbers that we just didn't know about in terms of the FY18 budget. So the concern that we have is when you were taking a student whose cost is X dollars, which I'm going to use 100,000 just because it's easy to remember, which there are plenty of students who need those services. The first 44,000 is you own it. The remaining 56,000 can come back at anywhere from 50 to 75% of it into the circuit breaker line that comes directly back to us. So that's how we project what we think we're going to get based upon the students that are there and what's actually coming back to us. And you'll see some of those line items within this budget in general. The other part is when you look at our budget, that's really important for us to communicate, is that the line items within the mandated areas fluctuate. It's probably the one thing that always ticks everybody off, is that it's a constant in and out. For example, just in the last few weeks, I could have $150,000 in special ed tuitions with $25,000 coming back because the kid left, but $75,000 going out because a new kid arrived or a new kid needs services within the special education line items. And that's our biggest worry, because it fluctuates back and forth. It's not just a bill that we pay on July 4th. We actually pay it here, I believe it's by month, if I remember correctly, to each of the private vendors, or in our case, we've moved many of our students into the public collaboratives. So we belong as a community to both Reed's Collaborative and BICO Collaborative. BICO's 18 communities, Reed's is 17 communities that provide services, everything from behavioral disabilities to specialized disabilities and programming. So you might say, why have to add a 0.8 FTE assistant speech pathologist? Well, we're going with trying to find a secondary person, if you will, who's trained, who will be supervised by a speech pathologist who's in the system, if you will, and we have many of them. And this is literally a group of students that we have going through the middle school and the high school. And how do we get them the services? That's what we're talking about. How do we get them speech services? And we just have a group of students, a bigger group of students, where we can't just shift another speech pathologist and send them there. We need the actual body. The transitional specialist is very interesting. So we are now finding ourselves in situations where we need to provide supports through the community and through state services on transitioning students coming out of high school at 18 with assistance, with support from us, because remember, starting at 14, a student can be in an IEP meeting and advocate for themselves. In many cases, they may have a family member that's doing it, in most cases. So this person's specific job is to tie in the community and work, community and community colleges, community and four-year colleges, and tie in how we're going to make sure that this student just doesn't drop off on the day that they graduate. We have that entire, from the age of 14 on. At the high school level, it's really important because it's not just an adjustment counselor or a guidance counselor that does it. It's a specialized person around vocational education, vocational skill development. Who are the service providers for these students going to be? Because don't forget, once they turn 18, unless they're mandated by agreement that they're staying until 22, the fact is we own that student as part of that transition. So for the IEP, for example, we have to say, yes, we provided transitional services to the student. This is what we did. We provided them the support that they needed in terms of job placement or transitioning to college. We had one case last year that cost us $50,000. One. Because the advocate and parent came back and basically just said, you didn't provide transitional services. So this is a way to not have a surprise on a yearly basis that costs us funding, or costs us potential lawsuit, to be quite honest, to be frank. The other part of it is the 2.0 paraprofessionals. Those are positions already taken. Those are not floating positions. Those are already filled for July. We do not have any announced retirements in that department, or I should say for September. We do not have any announced retirements at this time. If you go to section on the general education, it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, you see there everything from positions to expenses and so on and so forth. And again, we can speak and give you more detail if you'd like. What I'd like to end with, and then take any of your questions that you have, is other funding sources. I know this is always something that comes up. Other funding sources includes the full Department of Revenue projected school choice at $660,000. That is being used currently in this budget proposal. And you'll see on that page that we're left with $242,119, eating up another part of the carryover from years of choice. And then you see exactly underneath it what choice is paying for. So this is $717,880.37 that is fully being paid by 110 students that attend from other districts. It is a zero cost to the local taxpayer in terms of the budget. And as you can see by the numbers of Chromebooks that we're buying here, it's not going to 110 kids. It's going to 2,100 kids. So we are fully engaged next year in grades 3 through 12 in one-to-one Chromebooks. We lease, purchase, we have to back order. We're now a district that is utilizing technology at a high level. In grades 3, 4, and 5, the one-to-one stay in the classroom. They do not go home. Starting in 6th grade and up, they are with them. Yes, we do have security locks and safeties and all the other software stuff that you have to have as part of these costs. And then you have all of our curriculum is in here. It's not in the operating budget. So that's where you see the line items, hardware, software. Furniture is small pieces of furniture that were requested because of seating issues that we have with students. Matt and I are actually attending I don't even know what it's called, but it's a kind of a fair, if you will, for school furniture. Trying to take a look at what are the costs of these, what's the best approach for us? Do we piecemeal this? Do we just go out under one? Do we discuss the capital? Do we put it in operations? So what you're seeing here is piecemeal. It's nothing. It's no classroom purchases of items. To the right of that, you see the revolving to cover salaries. You'll see that facilities revolving is utilizing that, and then the pre-K revolving as well, because preschool is at 103 students, most you've had. And then the grants, we are assuming a 10% cut, and as you know, the president announced a 10% cut, or an 8% cut to domestic programming, so we're assuming that we'll see a decline in every one of our grants except for the federal special education, because that's actually based on bodies as well. Typically that goes up anywhere between 20 and 30. We're taking the 10 at 28.44. And then the next page is the revolving accounts, everybody's other favorite. And you'll see line item by line item, beginning balance, actual year-to-date receipts, year-to-date projected receipts, total actuals, and fund balance, and then on the revenue side, and then you see the same going on the expense side. We currently, to project a question that may come up from Mr. DeLuca, we anticipate currently, as of this morning, we have $112,000 not procured in salaries otherwise. So you all know that within any emergency situation that takes place, that's where our money would come from. For the remainder of this year. We also have a different article, I think it's within that special, that talks about FY19. If you want to talk about that, I can as well, and that's a supplemental request. And that is around a significant increase that we have had around sickness. And we have some concerns. We projected out and increased that line item for this current year, as we do every year, for substitutes, both long-term and short-term. Every single time a teacher is out, I have to pay for a substitute. I am still paying that full salary. And that includes any of my other unions. I have 2 employees within sick banks receiving sick bank payments, and we're still backfilling salaries. Workers' comp, we're still backfilling 40% of that on a regular basis, still paying for the substitute as well if it's an hourly employee that we're required to backfill, or overtime. So that's the big picture of the budget. We are projecting, so that you know, for next year, I believe I started with this, but class sizes to be higher in all grades across, based upon keeping what we have and not adding new positions. And let me, I guess, just briefly talk about why health, why the wellness position at the middle school and high school. So that is a reinstatement at the middle school that was cut last year, and it's a, which ended up being a bump that went to the high school, but that's a full-on health curriculum starting in grade 9 for high school students around vaping, smoking, drugs, overdosing, suicide. We are seeing, not here necessarily in Norton, but we are in fact seeing some climbs nationally with teenage hot topics, as I call them, of issues like suicide. Hospitalization continues to be something that we have to deal with. Just this past week, I had to deal with a comment that happened outside of school grounds, but it was good enough for us to have 2 police officers, our SRO, myself, a school committee member who was in the room with me at that time, my business manager, assistant superintendent, and the building principal, all working to make sure that this child was safe. In the end, they were. But the fact is, those are your resources at play. It requires a lot of different people. In this particular case, it also required something I haven't done in quite a while, and that is I had to bring out my Portuguese and speak to a parent in my first language, and that was better than I thought, to be quite honest, but I know how much I've lost over the last few years. But that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, the law enforcement, teachers, administrators. We're seeing a changing demographic, and we have to deal with it, and we have to do these interpretations legally, just have to be requested. And we legally have to provide it, especially if it's around any 504s, ELL documentation, or special education documentations. Somebody before the meeting asked me, so how's that before and after school program for reading going? So let me give you some statistics. We have 62 students in the before and after school at the JCS, Yale, and Hay as of this morning. We will be able to, with the funds that you supported and the school committee had me put aside, the $60,000, we'll be able to support that program through the first week of June, which is perfect. Because then at that point you get a lot of celebrations going on in class. But that's before school at the Yale Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and then at the Yale in the afternoon, Wednesday and Thursdays. And then as a comment, my principal said, Mr. Gagan said that he was able to talk to 3 parents during parent-teacher conferences last week. And there was positive comments from the parents and the student that said that they've already seen improvements in their reading. As I said earlier, the fact is we'll see what some of our data says about our students over time, but these are 62 students that have been targeted for support, that are getting support, that feel comfortable. LGN is 3 times a week, 21 students enrolled, so 25 at the L, 21, and then JCS is 16. So, and we'll report back some aggregated, if you will, data, big data, not student-by-student data to you if you so wish, which I'll get, so we'll give it to you.
I've got to ask a question, right?
Oh, Tom.
Ask a question, I'll think I'm mad. First of all, what's the delta in the student population from last year to now?
Yes, thank you. It is a delta of 35 students.
Up
It
or
is
down?
down, and that's predominantly K, and then the shift in the 1-2 that we've had that smaller class. We're projecting down, we're down 131 in fiscal 14, and we're down 8.3 staff. That's teaching staff, 7.1 of it last year.
Now, each were 5.81% out there.
Yeah.
That was in between something, was,
That's the level services number.
okay.
That's to keep what we have and keep the, and require the mandates.
That's what I thought it was, okay.
Sorry, one of the things I didn't do in this budget page that I learned was to just create a line item that says level services, because it just gives you the information.
That's okay. I just got the number, I didn't know what it was. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Byetta, have we heard anything from the State House about them mandating kindergarten full-time and paying us to do it?
Yeah, it's, so this is one of the benefits for us in the Chapter 70 account, is that those communities that have moved into Chapter 70 seeing better funding under kindergarten, you're going to see a higher number. For example, right now you're basically working on 7,000 instead of your traditional 10,000 as one example. The other example that's really important is, even though we're very small and our numbers are very small, we have 26 students who are second language. First language is not English, so they're ELL. 16 different languages out of 26 students. Okay? So try to figure out how to, there's only so many Portuguese speaking people I can take care of for you for nothing. It's just we want to service them right. They're part of our community. They live here. They're doing well. They're very good kids and great families. But we have to find the resources, and those resources are not easy to find when most of them are in the bigger urban districts. Thank goodness, one of the things we're trying to reach out through our colleagues is Taunton and Attleboro, because they also have hundreds of students whose language is not. But when you have one language for one student out of 26, and it's a very difficult language to find an interpreter for, you have to do it. So yes, the formula benefits communities like Norton if it moves in that direction, because it takes care of some of those holes that haven't been taken care of. The other part of it is fund circuit breaker at 75%, as the statute says. Don't play with that number. Those are our neediest students. They cost the most. We have a requirement to them and their families funded at 75%. The discussion in this room would be very different at 75%. We've had years, Mike and I have had years back in the community where we worked before, where a circuit breaker came in at 50. So we projected 65. This year we projected 60. So if it comes in at 75, there's a number where I can report back to you, I don't have to ask you for $175,000 because it's in that account, and show you it's in that account, and then when it gets taken, show you that it's taken out of that account, instead of, it's a saving grace for everyone.
Dr. Bayard, how many school choice students are there right now?
110.
110. Is that full?
No.
Is there more? Okay. How many?
No, it's, next year, the projected is 10 in each grade in K to 8, and, no, K to 5, and no cap in grades 6 through 10. We do not do 11th and 12th grade choice as a new application. Students can stay, but they can't come in as 11th and 12th graders. The only time that we've ever done that has been special requests from parents who are actually moving out of town, but they'd like to stay, and the committee has provided me the authority to do that, just report it back to them. They've been Norton kids all their lives. They're moving to Mansfield. They're juniors, and they want to just stay with and so we get the money from Mansfield, or whatever community.
And is there a vetting process for these people?
Yeah, so the vetting, that's a great question, thank you. The vetting process is around legal issues. So I meet with all of the older students, myself, personally. I review the report cards. If they happen to have any special education needs, that's taken care of reviewed by the special education office, because we may not have the programming. And if we don't, I can't say it's an out, but we have an opportunity to say, I don't have that. In the case of legal issues, I can assure you that I've had those situations happen, and I've not had the student here or come at all. And we've also had students that if they become an issue, like just last week I met with I called a parent because I have a young man that I've taken a liking to who's younger, and he's being a little bit of rabble-rouser, and I reminded him, and then mom, that, I need their support. Our biggest issues with school choice is not grades, it's attendance, because they have to get here on time. And I don't know if you've been on 123 between 7 and 8 in the morning, but it's not an easy ride, as I'm sure, Tom, when you're going out for that coffee. But it's just a one-liner.
Basically.
But that's the vetting process. You cannot stop a student from coming to a choice district unless you capture numbers, or they have a legal issue. Now, one of the other things that we do is we also turn around and I ask the sending district, there's a form, an inter-district form on discipline, because sometimes what happens is somebody gets moved. For example, I had a situation this year where a superintendent called me and said, I have a safety concern with a student. It's nothing but that. Would you allow it? And I said, no. I said, I'm not going to get into that area. I'm going to try to keep it as concise as we can. So we didn't do it.
And can they be removed?
Like any student, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The other side of that, clearly the school choices work to our benefit, and that's very good. But what sort of changes there been in terms of Norton students going someplace else? Is it going down, remaining constant?
It's pretty consistent. We had an uptick last year at the charter school, but after the reporting season, the number was gone. As an example, that we didn't see the 6 increase in the actually end of year. I think a lot of it is a couple different things. I can't offer vocational education, so Southeastern is always going to be a big. I'm very concerned, and I publicly have said this at a school committee meeting, and I think I've said it here. I'm very concerned, and Mike and I have talked about how we have a $100 million agricultural school going in, right, with the rehab of Bristol Aggie, of which you're paying, I think it's $70,000 per year, and I didn't see anybody come in front of anybody to pass that. So there's a little bit of the hiccup, and I understand that the Aggies need to be caught up, but that's a $70,000 price tag that we all know is coming from municipal budget, regardless if you're school, police, it doesn't matter. I know Mike and I were both told, and I won't speak for Mike, but I know I was told that, well, we posted the hearing. Really, we posted a hearing. Passed a $100 million budget in whatever it is, number of communities, 13, 14 communities, by posting a hearing. Yet, how many hearings do you folks have to go through to renovate and put in a new addition on a new building? And how long did that take? So there's a little bit, to your question as well, Paul, the other issue that comes up, and Mike and I have talked about this a lot, if school choice has been frozen at $5,000, which is the minimum, for years. Now, you get some upticks. Ours is actually averaging a little over $6,000, but the fact of the matter is that's your baseline. But yet everything else is going up, and there's been no increase to that. So there's a lot of discussions. Some districts don't want to have school choice, because of where you're surrounded. I will assure you, in the next 10 years, we will be surrounded by school choice. Because without naming districts, a bunch of districts around us are having declining enrollment for the first time. And they're having public discussions about it. So in one way, we said, we think Norton's a great place. We think we offer a good service. We try to treat kids as individuals, and we beat people to it, and I think it's been a benefit. I expect that number to climb. We have a full-on school choice blurb that we do with social media, and that's where we get it more. We already have, it's not approved until, I think we start the 25th. We already have 8 phone calls. So we know that the parents are very interested. And our special education numbers, and that total 110 is lower than your average for Norton, quote Norton. We still have 40 students from Reed's in our building that are part of our district, if you will. And that's a straight facilities cost because it's rental. And I'm trying to think of, and we have the out-of-district students. Those are like our accounts, if you will.
Is any one community the majority of school choice?
It's a good split between Attleboro and Taunton. Yeah, but I can get you some of those breakdowns if you'd like. Not a problem.
Do you track that school choice number as far as retention?
Sure.
When they
Oh, yeah.
start to be-
Yep, we do. We have retention. The other thing, in terms of my numbers are month to month on all of the school choice students, and actually all of our students. I get month-to-month reports on the uptick, up and down, students in, students out. Our churn is what we call it in education. Our churn is actually at about 4.3%, which is a high number for us. We've always been in that 1.8, 2.2, but our latest number for last year was 4.3. So that's the in-out factor. 35 kids leave, 32 come in, 14 leave, 12 come in, 60 leave, 12 come in. It's that constant number. We see more of that than we've ever before.
Man, so for the school choice people, how many are using these additional services that we're talking about? Second language, English is?
I believe it's 2 in the second language, so it doesn't really hit our budget in negative. I already have the body, if you will, because it's 20, I think it's 2 choice and 24 are local, like residents of the town. And then special education, most of our special education is around speech, OT, PT services, and inclusion practices, where they have to be within the inclusionary classroom. I think we have currently 1 student with specialized programming, and we will go through the community process of getting, quote, the extra money for that particular student or students. So it's always been, it's always an issue of controversy, because let's say I'm the student who all of a sudden came to this school, everything's great, and you're getting $5 grand. Things are perfect. All of a sudden, I have the social emotional issue. I have depression, I'm suicidal, whatever the negativity may be, and that child needs assistance. What we do for every single one of those students is, like circuit breaker, we put in all the services, we do the same thing for our school choice kids. It's not circuit breaker, it's how you get to the allocation. So if the student's getting 30 minutes of speech, we're getting a calculation of that of 30 times 1 time a week for 36 weeks. We put that in there, that goes in, and then they recalculate our number. So that's why you'll see averages above 6,000.
So when you say they, is that?
That's DESE, Department of Elementary Secondary Education. Okay. Yeah, they run all of our Chapter 70 funds.
Okay.
And that's on SACID numbers, so they can trace you from grade to grade. They can trace you from teacher to teacher. They can trace you from service delivery to service delivery. Every single person.
Just one last question.
Sure.
Remember last spring, briefly, we discussed, obviously the pain with the mandated costs. And you mentioned their neighboring towns, they were trying to create like a line item bank, and did you?
We are still, that's a great question, thanks for asking that. We are still working with Dayton Rehoboth as one of our communities on how do we do inter-district. So if I have a K-5 student and they do, and then I take them over from 6 to 12, and then we split the cost for until 22. That is absolutely the next wave of what we're doing. It's just a matter of sitting folks down and saying, which program do you want that aligns to mine, and how do you grow it? Because the other thing we don't want to do is take these exorbitant transportation costs. We find the number one issue with these agreements to be the transportation cost. If you're working for me as a special ed teacher, and you've got 3 students and 2 paraprofessionals, and they've got another student, instead of sending it to a next place for $48,000, they may be sending it to us for $28,000, and a contract agreement with us that gives us the financial in and out. So if the student all of a sudden now needs a one-to-one, their cost. The student needs a monitor, their cost. What that happens, though, is because they started with a lower threshold. Spoke was here at one time. The Spoke Collaborative, what you folks were part of, they closed years ago now. But I had students in Spoke in my last community. When they closed, I brought back the student, hired a teacher, a one-to-one para, and Easton sent me their student. So what I did is I absorbed a partial payment of the teacher's salary. The only thing that we had to discuss and debate on the town side, and Mike was the town manager at the time, was we had to take a look at benefits. And that particular year we got lucky, no one needed health benefits. But you can also add that into the actual cost. You can say we're going to split it. And it's only really with teachers because they're in the Mass Teachers Retirement System, so you're not going to be paying county for X number of years. And then the second part becomes health care. Long-term cost, if the person retires, for example.
So if your school population's going down, how are your class sizes going up?
Because if you take a look at our, well, there's 2 pieces to it. Number one, it depends on where you hit. I may get, like, we're projecting 31 students, but right now, we're looking at potentially kindergarten. We're not looking at the secondary level in terms of decline enrollment. We're not going to see that because the bubble is still at the elementary level. So my concern is that it's 31 students, but I don't know where they're going to be. I mean, last year, I think I said the number, I want to quote myself correctly, I think it was 35, if I remember correctly. Let me just look at it real quick. And when you look at that breakdown of 35, I don't think I have the breakdown in front of me, but when you look at the breakdown of 35, you see it at the secondary elementary level. That's where you see it. The second few years, because we have the bubble that started 3 years ago, now entering 3rd grade. So for this year, we're going to shift that population of teachers from 2nd grade into 3rd grade. So you'll see a shift in one of our, actually it's not on there, but you'll see a shift of a teacher moving to another grade in order to keep the class size down, because we won't need that teacher in 2nd grade. So that's the constant shift for us. And then there's the potential long-term utilization of school choice to offset class size increases. We're not there yet, but I think in the near future we're going to be. And that's been a discussion that's been taking place with the school committee.
Are all, I don't know how to say this the right way, are all schools at capacity?
JCS is pretty packed. LGN has got 1 classroom in the library wing, which is now also used for OT-PT speech services, so it's really not a free classroom because they'd have to do it out in hallways, etc. Hay has got 2 classrooms on the top floor. One is used for storage, and then we have read space at the Hay. JCS has read space as well, 2 classrooms downstairs. Pre-K is filled in a lot of that because we have 103 students in that program now. We're offering services, longer services. High school is at absolute capacity. I mean, we already have teachers not being able to stay in their classrooms. And middle school is where we have some of our space. On the far wing is where we have our specials, but our class size is maintaining at 20. And we use a middle school model. So, you know, it's easy to say, well, let's eliminate middle school model and go back to a junior high. Research is pretty clear that that's not the way we should be going. I would suggest to you that if the question entailed where are we going to be in 3, 5, 6 years, I think you're going to be looking at some reshifting of the district. It's just a matter of, you know, the community, what happens, when does the decline fall. 2024 is when you get, it's supposed to be your lowest number. It's 2,100. That's 2024. So that's That's the facts. I mean, that's the NESDEC projected that gets us to our lowest number. A couple of years ago, we had an increase of 6 students, FY 16 from 15. We saw an increase of 6 students. So we project, we use our better projections, we shift the bodies to go with the larger class size, therefore we're not asking for an elementary position. There's no request for elementary positions in this budget. There's no request for middle. There's a request for middle around programming, wellness, which we think is a really targeted area. Vaping is in every school is an issue, and younger. And we can't just suspend students. Chapter 222 requires that we get creative. Can't just suspend them. And for things like vaping, suspending is actually, you know what we're doing, right? We're just setting up people to be at home by themselves. That's not necessarily the best. And vape.
And vape. No requests this year for another resource officer?
The resource officer, I did speak to the police chief last week, is in his budget.
Right.
And he informed me that if he needs to make cuts, then that would be where he cuts. So we maintain the one. I will tell you, last month alone, I informed the school committee of 78 different situations in the district involving kids. And it runs the gamut. Happy to share that information with you if you'd like. At the same time, you have a fantastic school district. This is not, you're not sticking out like a sore thumb here, you know, where things are happening with kids. Keep that in mind, because, you know, it's wonderful to tell the story that we believe we need to be appropriately funded. It's another time to also tell the story we're doing some really good things. Imagine if we did have our level services funding, even if we started there. Then that would allow for me to do things like, if somebody retires, another announced retirement, I'll do what we did with science to computer science. Some of you remember this move where we were asking for a computer science teacher. We didn't get the funding. We didn't get the support for it, which is fine. That's a decision that was made. And a science teacher left us for another district. So I informed the school committee, we're gonna go after a computer science. Yes, we increased class sizes in the science classrooms, but we felt it was too important not to get into the computer science area. So we started it at no cost to your budget. Sometimes we get lucky.
The process to review positions you had during the year,
Yep.
what is that process? You give a high level, and then
Sure.
second, is it different for teaching positions versus admin positions?
No, it's the same per position. I communicate with the school committee, find the resources. In most of our cases, it's done in the summertime due to people leaving. This past summer, we lost 11 people, for example, people who just left. We didn't create teaching positions per se, but we had to backfill positions of people who left at almost the same cost. I mean, I had a science teacher leave at 85. I had a computer science teacher at 84, and they had to take a $5,000 pay cut to come to Norton, as an example. But I inform them of any changes and suggestions, or they tell me, I'm worried about grade 3 class sizes. We want to see the priority be grade 3 class sizes, as an example.
And then how many admin positions have we added over the last 3 years? Non-teaching admin.
The last 3 years,
Last 3 years.
Chris, assistant principal at the JCS with early childhood. That's my last administrative hire. High school has 2, middle school has 2, Hay has 2, LGN has 1. It was the early childhood program and expanding it, and an assistant principal with over 500 students.
Okay. And then is there a different definition for support staff? Is admin?
Yes, there's admin who have direct evaluation and responsibility, and then there's support staff. My office has, through the school committee this year, a communications person,
Yep.
but no other growth in those departments.
And so for support staff over the last 3 years?
I have an administrative assistant, the assistant superintendent does, 1 in SPED, another 1 in SPED, all been there since I've been here. Some of their titles have changed, but not added positions, as new positions. Athletic director was added 6 years ago now, my first year. JCS, early childhood / assistant principal, and that had to do with increasing early childhood and 500 students with 1 adult with specialized programs. It's just not, it's not appropriate. In the next, I mean, I could show you some layering of administrators, but we don't have them. I'm happy to have further conversations with you about that. in terms of what we pay, how competitive it is. We have all that stuff internally.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman and Dr. Baeta, the second resource officer that's kind of come up for a couple of years now, according to my memory and the minutes, that $32,000 is not in Chief Clark's budget for the police.
75 of it was supposed to be school and
It's a 75-25 split is the way it's been carried. So to us, it's a bigger number, if you will. It's basically money just like your healthcare. It's taken off the top because we know it's a position that's helping us mostly, but still is an officer that belongs to the chief. So there's still everything from training and all that stuff that he has to do. He spends out of the 182 contractual days, if you will, with the teachers. That's how we aligned it. He spends about 172 of them with us. And then he's got formalized training and stuff he has to do both as an SRO and as an officer.
So is the second resource officer in the request?
I believe it's in the police chief's request. I don't want to misquote, but I'm pretty sure that he said it was going to be in that
I don't
request.
think it was.
In his wish budget, it was. In the
Right.
3.7 we
It
see,
was.
not in his level service budget.
Okay,
Right.
so that's what it is.
Right.
3.6 million.
Thank
It
you.
was in his 3.7.
Thank you, Tom.
Walter?
What's been the effect of the change in the staffing of the lunchroom services?
So numbers are up. Quality of the produce is definitely better in terms of what we get. I actually talk to students about this all the time because I know it always comes back to me. That group of former employees has reorganized as a union working for a private company. So they just took a vote and they're unionized again. Different contract. The contract conditions don't belong to us. It belongs to them. Startup cost was our major thing, but that happens every fall for us. We'll see where we are at the end of the year. Remember, it was a $90,000 hit, so any improvement to that is going to be a benefit to us in year one. And we have 2 more years left on that contract after this year. At the end of the year, we'll do a whole fiscal analysis of it. How did it work? Where did we see the expenses? Most of our expenses, the purchasing power of that company is just, it's international. It's just, that's where it's beneficial. In terms of the bottom line, I think we'll see a significant benefit. I know that what the students are getting, they're commenting that it's better. And staff as well. We see staff buying lunch. Yes.
Speaking of contracts, when does the teachers' contract come?
Teachers are ending year 3 this coming year. So we are in contract negotiations starting April 25th between the school committee and the Norton Teachers Association and Para Association. They are coming together as one group renegotiating their contract with the school committee. Mr. Savas and Ms. Gallagher are the representatives of the school committee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, you have my email. Feel free. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Just a couple other things tonight. You have the communications budget in front of you as requested. And in that budget, there is now a position for a per diem person. That's $20,000 a year if that person's able to work the 960 hours.
Mike, is that communications?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
so we're trying to cut down on some of the overtime. This person would be able to fill shifts if they're not taken by current people. And this will be our last year of operating our dispatch center, because the following July, we will be moving into the new center.
Yeah.
Mike, a question, there was a schedule on the potential savings of going regional.
Mhm.
And if I looked at the spreadsheet right, it took the cost for each individual town in total,
Right.
combined them all up, and then the new regional center was each individual town's expenses. Where's our savings? Is it just the head of our,
I'll bring that presentation to the next meeting, so I'll have that to show you.
okay.
Yep. And the other thing is the capital.
Well, Mike, back in communications.
Yep.
Is the salary increase contractual, or, because the part-time
Well,
is broken out?
This is something that I have to review when I do my update. There's two positions in there, to be determined positions. I believe we're only going to need one of those positions, so it would bring it back down to closer to where we were this year, except for the extra 20,000 for the per diem person.
Yep. Okay.
And that may not even be spent. It all depends if that person fills in.
Thank you.
I just wanted to go over the capital recommendations. In capital, when we started our deliberations, the balance in the account is $695,344. Then we took out payments that we have to make, payment 2 of 5, 5 of 5, 3 of 5, whatever. And that's $251,000. So that left us a balance of $444,344. So we wanted to make sure that we left money in the fund, that we didn't deplete the fund. So we're able to fund some things that have to be done now that can't wait. And then some of the things we hope we'll be able to fund in the fall when we put more money into capital, and more than likely we will. So the first item is under conservation, and that's $25,750. That's for renovations to the Camp Edith Reed complex. If you've been out there, the building has been torn down, the house out front, and now we have to fill the pool, and then there's some work that we have to do on the buildings out back. Southeastern is going to do a lot. Southeastern Regional is going to do a lot of the work for us. We'll have to buy all the supplies and to do that, and we've got to bring cable out to the back building so that we can put cameras up, security cameras that we'll be installing as part of this. The next item is the police department. They actually had two items. Oh, I skipped over. If you look you'll see the department request, and first one was data processing. We need to replace the servers here, and just something that we'll have to wait until we have money, hopefully in the fall. Police department had two requests, and the first was for 3 cruisers, and the second is replacement of a 5-year plan of portable radios. We can fund the cruisers now. The main reason for that is it takes so long. If the chief orders them after town meeting, it takes months for them to finally be delivered here. So he didn't want to wait until October. He wants to try and have them before next fall. The next item are under fire department. The first is a new Zodiac. That's $45,000, and that will come out of ambulance. The second, JAWS heavy rescue equipment. That will also come out of ambulance. Pumper replacement, $125,000. That's payment 2 of 5. That'll come out of capital. And then the repair to the floor at the Burgess Station, $75,000. 50% of that will come out of ambulance and 50% out of capital. Animal control, $23,000. Brian needs to replace some fencing and gates that have been damaged down there, windows, and also some doors. And this $23,000 will come out of the the animal control fund. We currently have about $90,000 in the fund, so that's what the fund is there for, to keep the animal shelter up. So we'll use that. The schools had a number of requests. The first one is similar to our request. They need to replace servers. The next one is to $38,000 to repair the gym floor at the high school. And this is something that has to be done during the summer, so that's why we want to fund that now. And the other request was for $60,000 for athletic facilities master plan, and that was something that we didn't have the funds to do right now. Highway Department, all 4 items that are recommended for funding are all payments. 2 of 5, 5 of 5, 5 of 5, and 3 of 5. The next item is the purchase. We have the vehicles, the town vehicles, the all electric and the 3 volts that are currently we were leasing, and the lease is up this year, and this would purchase those vehicles for the town. The next items are sewer and water, and all the sewer projects that were recommended would come out of the sewer enterprise funds. None of this will be out of capital. A pickup with a plow, $54,500. Generator replacement and electrical upgrades at the Cobb Street Station, $220,000. And replace their old crane on the sewer truck, $13,060. And underwater, water main cleaning, $200,000. The variable drives at replacement at wells 1, 3, and the 3 MG tank, $40,000. 4-log removal, pipe work, $125,000, and 4-log removal at another location, $125,000. And the Cottage Street tank engineering review, $150,000. And to replace a pickup with plow and accessories, $54,500. So on the last page, you can see that where the funds will be coming from. $505 will come out of capital. Ambulance reserve, $132,500, and the dog fund, $23,000. Total sewer surplus, retained earnings, $280,560, and total water surplus, retained earnings, $694,500. So hopefully in the fall, we can fund some of those other items, but we want to leave the $181,000 that we have in there.
Walter?
Last year, I think it was last year, it was discovered that the backup mechanism for town and school records was inadequate or non-existent. Was there anything done about that?
School department, yes.
School department, yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we're up to code on that?
Yeah, what's happening is in our case, our case is the servers that are in the 10-year range that we're trying to upgrade in terms of the software that we received, if I remember correctly, through capital in the fall. That was done immediately. I think it was just under $30,000 if I remember correctly for the schools.
Good.
And the same here.
Okay, great. So we feel we're steeled against future attacks?
Hopefully. It's constantly happening.
Okay.
Bob?
Maybe one change coming shortly. We've received additional information on the Capital Improvement Committee that the athletic field and master plan, the feasibility studies for the master plan, they were requesting $60,000. We may be able to get it done for $20,000, around $20,000. So there may be some reconsideration on this. We're going to try to put another meeting together and talk about that to see if we want to spend the extra 20 this year now while we have the opportunity to get the best deal for a buck. So just to let you know that there may be a slight change in our request.
And
At the end of the day, what are we trying to determine with that?
I'll let the superintendent.
You have to convince us
At the end of the day, what we're requesting is to take a look at a football field track area that was spent money on a few years ago, plus the back of the Hayes School, and looking at what's the best long-term plan for that in terms of fields. We currently have our football field closed. It'll be closed through probably all of the spring. We're growing crabgrass only. We need to stay off of it. I closed it after Thanksgiving, and it's closed currently. We are using 123 where the Y is, it always escapes me. The campground.
Finberg.
Thank you, Finberg. We're using that this spring for lacrosse, for our games, in order to be able to just stay off the football field. So for us, it's all about it's truly a master plan. We have a company, I won't announce it, but we had one company that's given us a quote from 3 years ago that actually upped their quote again. We've asked for 2 more quotes from 2 other companies. The $60,000, so that you know, was based upon a local community in the Tri-Valley League who just had published their master study for one field. We know that the company we're working with is potentially going to give us a good cost. So the idea is the use of the fields. The back of my building, the Hay building where my office is, if you know, that has all been dredged at some point. It's got holes all over the place because they backfilled stuff into it, and it's unsafe, to be quite honest. It's not, you know, for a playground it's okay, but for a football practice, it's just not feasible. So we want to try to see if we can do. We're also one of only 2 communities in our Tri-Valley League. If you remember, our boys soccer team for 2 consecutive years hasn't been able to play on the high school field for the tournament. We've had to move the game to Wheaton because the teams don't want to play on that because it's natural grass and it's not in good condition by the time November comes in for a playoff season. So that's the intent of it.
Joe, just to clarify too, Camp Finberg, we're paying them to use it.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we're kind enough, the YMCA, that our guys are going to be cutting it, but there's still a fee for us to be using it just for this 1 year to stay off of it.
What's the condition of the track?
The track has had a condition since the first day, which is it should have been a wider track, but that is a discussion I really don't want to get into because I wasn't here and doesn't get me anywhere. But it needs to be repointed, if you will, and then lined as well at minimum. One of the thoughts is, do we turn the football field into a nice natural grass field, upgrade the track, if you will, and by update I don't mean a new track, I mean an update, and then take behind the Yale School and look at that foundation for lighted fields at night for community use and the town use and town sports and all that stuff. On the other side of it, do we just build one field because it's more cost effective and we have one turf field only? That's a little bit of an issue for us because of the number of sports teams we have, but again, we want to put a plan in place that we can down the road try to tackle.
The track's used now.
Yeah, the track is used. So the track, in order to be used for tournaments and stuff, has to be an 8-lane track. Yeah. It's a 6-lane. Decision was made at the point, as you know. This group would come in, or whoever we hire, comes in and literally looks at the whole field. We have a committee, Bob actually sits on it, of local folks that are just come together and said, we would like to see if we could have a facility that's comparable. What that looks like, who knows? What I don't want to do is piecemeal here, piecemeal there, and the next thing you know, I'm talking to Tom again about more money.
Yeah, when we did the high school, the state wouldn't give us anything for athletic facilities.
Right.
We redid the track, and the big change that we made, it was a 6-lane track, so we kept it as a 6-lane track. The big change we made is we changed it from yards to meters, which meant that one end we had to cut and build it, and so it has different curvature on the two ends of the track now. But it's a meter track, and the track itself should be pretty good because it was really rebuilt from scratch when we redid the high school. But you're quite right; it's a 6-lane track, and if you're going to run tournaments now, you got to have an 8. You've got to have an
right. And I don't want to beat the dead horse on the track, but the fact of the matter is, it's not something that's on my radar to redo a track. I'm not saying that shouldn't be looked at as part of everything, but it's an uphill battle to look at that issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's a perfectly good track for dual meets and so forth.
And that's what we do now.
And we'll live with it.
And hearing Joe talk about the fields and everything else, the selectmen have asked for volunteers to be on a committee to review the Community Preservation Act. Norton has not approved the Community Preservation Act, so the selectmen would like to form a committee to review it and see if it's something that maybe the town would be interested in. And funds from that could be used for fields. So if anyone's interested, let me know and let the selectmen know. We're looking for volunteers to be on that committee. On Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at the high school is the public meeting on the Town Hall Community Center. The building committee will be giving a presentation the architects for each building will be there. And so if anyone is interested, hopefully you can attend that.
I'll be there.
All right, Peter.
Two separate buildings, not one big building?
There are two buildings with a walkway connecting the buildings. They are separate buildings, yes.
Bob?
There's a reason why I'm not on social media. Because really sometimes I don't want to hear it, but I guess there's a lot of buzz out there about the Sun Chronicle article the other day, and unfortunately sometimes the paper don't get everything, as we all know. They don't get it all right. So I want to try to clarify a few things. There is a placeholder on the special town within the town meeting coming up to look at funding for these two buildings. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I know that if you go to an annual town meeting and ask for $25 million for a debt exclusion, there's going to be a lot of buzz over it. And we won't have a building big enough to handle the people that are going to come out for it. So the Board of Selectmen have not taken a position on that position in that article yet. The meeting Wednesday night will give everyone some more insight on what's happening. We have been presented with a proposal and what it looks like. The building committee, which was formed by the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, has done a very good job of taking what we think our needs are and putting them in place. Unfortunately, it's going to cost about $25 million. Now, when you start talking about big money like that at an annual town meeting, when you're trying to get a 3.4% increase or whatever, it kind of falls on deaf ears and it's probably not going to be very successful. My personal opinion is something like this, we need to continue to explore, make sure we continue to be transparent, make sure everybody's understanding exactly what this is all about, show off the plans the best we can to make sure everybody knows what they are. I think we can all agree, based on what we're sitting in here right now, you know, the possibility of looking at a new town hall is credible. I think it's something we should look at. And on the senior side, it's necessary. We have no choice. But I think to allay some of the fears and concerns out there, the Board of Selectmen have to vote to put the article on the annual town meeting. I don't get the feeling that the Board of Selectmen is going to do that. I don't think we're going to be ready for it. I think we still have a lot of work to do to explain a few things. The one thing the Board of Selectmen does have is the opportunity to call for a special town meeting at any time. And that doesn't mean we have to wait until October. We could, but we don't have to. So if we really feel it's necessary and we really feel we've done a great job of getting the word out and explaining what the process is, you get a general feeling that people are going to support the whole concept or idea of two new buildings, then at that time we can always call for a special town meeting. Try to make it timely in a way that, you know, it's not in the middle of the summertime when everybody's gone and, you know, that kind of stuff, but maybe it's something we could look at. I don't want to take away the amount of effort and time that the building committee has put into this, because it's been a lot of work. And again, they've done a great job, but just from our hearing in the last couple of days and the general concern of the community, I think we'd be better off to back off a bit, make sure we get all of our ducks in order, and continue to look at this and make sure we have a presentation that everybody can agree to. We all know, sitting in this room, all of us know, that we cannot fund this project through our everyday budget. We'd be bankrupt. I mean, we couldn't possibly come up with $1 million a year to fund it. It's just not going to happen. So the debt exclusion has been talked about at a number of meetings, including the selectmen meetings. We realistically understood that that's the only way it's ever going to happen. So I don't know how much it is. You guys don't know how much it is. We'll get some more information on Wednesday night. We have some very preliminary numbers on what it's going to cost. I believe the site that they're looking at makes a lot of sense. The old Reed and Barton facility on Elm Street makes a lot of sense because we are going to take possession of that property once it's cleaned up anyway. So we might as well put it to practical uses. And again, the one building concept seems to be the natural place to put it. If we put it behind here, we put it next door, it's going to cost us a lot of money to do that. At least this way, at least we're getting the land for free. Basically for free. It may cost a few dollars to tear a few things down, but I think we're going to get it for a really good deal. And it'll be a beautiful place to have these kind of facilities. But I want to be clear that we are still very, very much in the preliminary stages here. We're just now getting the reports. If anyone watched the selectmen's meeting, I know you all have a life, and I'm sure you don't sit there every Thursday night and watch us, but we did have a presentation where they did make the presentation for both the COA, community building, and the town hall. So hopefully you can make it on Wednesday night so you can get a chance to see what we're talking about. But I want to allay some of the fears that the Board of Selectmen at this point have not. Finance Committee has not. Capital Improvement Committee has not had any discussion about this. And I think we need to back up a bit and make sure we do this right. Thank you.
Thank you. And one thing hopefully we can get out very early on Wednesday night is that building this building and building it with a debt exclusion has nothing to do with the budget. So people that are out there saying, well, how can we build these buildings if we can't fully fund our schools? It has nothing to do with the budget. It's a debt exclusion. And then people that are saying, why don't we fix the water first? That has nothing to do with this. Water is an enterprise account. It's fully funded by the ratepayers. So the debt exclusion has nothing to do with the water. So I hope we can get that out early.
So Mike, I can't remember my tax bill that came in. Is our debt exclusion separate when we get our tax bill? Do we see a separate amount?
No.
I think, if we're gonna sell this to people, they gotta know how much it's gonna increase their tax bill.
Well, they will know.
So I think, with our last debt exclusion, on my tax bill, I don't even know what it is. I mean, I pay it. I mean, I guess I could somehow figure it out, but it would be nice if our billing system, when this does happen, if it does happen, would show us, here's your taxes, here's your debt.
To know how much is going through.
Mike, there is one commonality between his, water and sewer expenses and debt exclusions and our tax bill. They're all expenses to the people who live in this town. So it doesn't really matter what form that comes in or what it says on the envelope. The money's got to go out of that person's household. So I think we do need to be considerate of the fact that if we have something looming, like major pipe replacement to back up the investment that we've made in this water treatment facility, to actually end up at the end of all of this providing clean water to people's homes. If we see that coming down the road as a major expense, even if that's through the water and sewer department, to say, well, that's nothing to do with our general operating budget, I think is a little tough for somebody who still has to pay that bill, whose rates are going to go up and whose expenses are going to go up. So I just hope we would be considerate of that.
Well, that's two different things. I mean, that's not the people that are saying we can't fully fund the school budget and we're going to do this. I'm trying to say funding the school budget is out of existing taxes. It's not coming out of a debt exclusion. So people obviously have to look at the ability to pay, but it has no effect on the current budget.
But the same people who said they didn't have the ability to pay for 2 failed overrides now have to consider whether or not they're willing to pay for the debt exclusion increase in their taxes.
Right. And the same people that supported a high school project
Right.
might be the same people that will support this. So.
But
to Aaron's point, and something that and maybe I try unsuccessfully to get through week in and week out, is each household only has so much money. So, yep, we're upgrading pipes or something, or you're going on to sewer, or we're gonna build a town hall. It all comes out of, you know, the individual's checking account at the end of the day, and we should be cognizant of not doing everything at the same time, so, you know, you get whacked
Well-
with another $1,000.
The water department is not gonna go out there and start replacing all the pipes in town.
Well,
Whatever.
I'm not saying,
What I'm just saying is that is an ongoing,
I understand.
for life project. So
But-
you can't say that the water department's gonna be replacing one pipe a year, so we have to live with this for the rest of our lives.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we need to be able to convey to the people out there, if we want them to sign up for a debt exclusion.
Convey the fact that the water department is not gonna go out and spend
It's
millions and
not
millions
just
of
the
dollars.
water department, it's the whole picture of the,
I understand that, but what people are saying is, if we're gonna be spending millions of dollars on water projects, how can we do this? Well, we're not gonna be spending millions of dollars on water projects in the near future. It's gonna be spread out for over years.
Can't we simply, one of the things I would expect if I go into a committee and find out how we're gonna do this, okay? This is our budget money, this is our real estate tax bill, period. This is the debt exclusion we have currently. How much of that is buried into our tax bill? Tax bill is gonna pay for the overall budget. Here's your water receipts. We all pay water receipts, we all pay. This is what's getting funded through those water receipts, your sewer receipts. What would potentially a $25 million building show up over years if it's gonna be funded 25, 30 years, whatever it is? Show people what's gonna come down. It's gonna drop down, but
It's.
it's like Peter was saying.
And they will have that information
You
on
get your
Wednesday.
bill today, we have no idea what year we're in for the debt exclusion for the school. It's accurate what piece of that is. We're all anticipating at some point that goes away and we should see a reduction in our tax bill.
It was
That
passed
never
in
happens.
2011,
that
right?
never happens.
The
It
debt ex-
doesn't, that's what I'm.
The debt
debt exclusion for the school was
Chairman,
passed
we're
in
always
2011.
You are always often talking about sort of big picture vision of what our expenses are looking like here, and what we might have in front of us in terms of being able to project this, you know, where we're headed. As the water and sewer liaison, thank you. Through some conversations with Frank over at the Water and Sewer Department, I think there's it sounds like there's a pretty good possibility that this treatment plant's gonna go online in July, get tested for a few months, run and be tested for a few months. And they'll be taking samples of the water, and we're gonna find out that we are now pumping clean water through dirty pipes in people's homes. It's not really gonna entirely fix the problem. And the issue we may be confronted with at the end of the day is not 100 yards of pipe per year, it's spaced out, but that they may think we've got to do a lot quickly, because we've now spent a bunch of money on this water, on this treatment plant that's doing its job but not providing the end result without partnering it with a lot of pipe replacement.
And I guess I want to add, I'm not picking on the water and sewer department. Let's get that
No.
clear. I'm just saying, big
Well,
ticket
And
items.
just something to answer that point, I did meet with Mansfield's engineer and their head of their water department 2 weeks ago, and took a tour of their facility, one of their pump stations. And I asked them, do you have a constant program for replacement of pipes and pipe cleaning? No. I said, you don't do any pipe cleaning or pipe replacement? Like, nope. And they had black water over there before they put in their treatment facility, so I can only use that as a possibility.
Paul?
One thing to bear in mind on this, going back to the school, Tom's right, that we passed the debt exclusion for the high school here in 2011. Actually, we didn't start paying on it till about 3 years later.
Right.
So when you say you already got a 30-year bond or 25-year bond.
20 years, I think it was.
But it didn't start.
Right,
Because
exactly.
we funded the construction because the state, one of the things the state did well was we could send our bills to them, and within 30 days, they would pay off their share of it. And so we were able to do all of that using short-term debt and what come back, and we only bonded the 12 million or whatever it was that we had to pay, have to have at the end for.
Right.
And we didn't do it for several years. So if you're going to count, when does it end?
Yep.
Remember that it didn't start until 11.
And we got
2034.
and we got 64 cents on the dollar from the state.
Yes, we did.
And that was the grease that slid it through. I mean, short of that, that may have been a marginal hanging thing. I know I had the opportunity to be the first chairman of the Finance Committee to go up and say we're having a debt exclusion override, and it passed. The town never had any kind of an override. So I guess I get credit for something. But
That one time.
Yeah, do you want to take over and?
no, once is enough.
Tom and I were up there on the stage.
We've
that
Bob?
day.
Kevlar
I think we all understand, some of us now on fixed income, some retired. Totally get it. But I think we have to take a look at the value of our community as a whole. I think we've done a good job of taking care of the schools the best we can. Could we do a better job? Yeah, definitely could. As far as capital improvements and overrides and that kind of stuff, new windows, doors, whatever it might be. But we've got to start taking a look at the other infrastructure part of the process here and recognize the fact that us seniors in the next few years are going to take over, at about 22% of your population within the year 2025. So, they're becoming more of us. Baby boomers are coming to fruition here. We did something creative. We actually put out, I asked the engineers to give us an idea. Mike had suggested that we look into this, where when you have a senior building, as an example, we have people that sometimes have a few extra dollars. And I asked the engineer to get back to us with a number. And if I wanted to buy a room and put it in my name, which I'm not going to do, but if I wanted to do that, how much would it cost to build that room? And again, if we take our time and try to figure out some of the process here, we might be able to get some in-kind gifts or donations where families may want to name a certain room after a family, or create a way that we can help fund some of these programs. We do have an anonymous $1.5 million donation already. Can't tell you where it came from, but we already have $1.5 million with the understanding we have to name something after them. So the possibilities are out there. I'm not suggesting it's going to happen again, but I think it's something we could look into. But at the same time, we can't expect donations to pay for the whole building process, but that's not going to work either. We're going to have to come up with a few dollars and make it all happen. But I think I'd ask you to, and I get the part about water bills. I just saw mine go up. I've seen, I live on Pine Street, and I'm told that some of the oldest water pipes are sitting in the ground right in front of my house going down Pine Street, which hopefully are going to be replaced soon. So my wife will get off the brown water wagon for a while. But I think it's important to look at everything and figure out what it does cost us to live here every day. And at some point, that debt exclusion for the school is going to hit a peak, and that's going to start coming down again. And that's when you don't feel the impact as much. But I totally agree. On our tax bill, it should say, this is your tax bill, this is what you're paying for in the debt exclusion. I think it should be shown separate, so we all understand what it is. I can tell you my bill went up about $600 the first year it happened. So I kind of got an idea where it came from. But I think it's overall we have to address the issue and look at it honestly and what we really need to do. I don't know for you guys, anytime anyone comes in this town hall, how many meetings have we had recently where we have people standing in the hallways out back trying to get in here? This room holds 30 people, maybe. It's tough to have any kind of a meeting here. And we still have the 1979 rugs on the floor in here. You know, we've become accustomed to it, I guess, but, you know, we have to look at this building that was built in 1910. This building here was 1910. The fire department was 1979. You know, this is an old gymnasium. You guys are sitting on the stage. We're on the stage right now. So, you know, at some point, we have to take pride in our community and figure out if this is what we want to do. Do we want a town hall where we're not embarrassed to invite other people in, or a council on aging building where they're so crammed now, they got no parking, it's ridiculous. The bathroom facilities here don't work. We are not ADA compliant at all here, if you look around. That hallway is not suitable. I mean, there's so many different issues here that we have to address. I remember building a house in '86 and having to use trailers outside because the air quality in this building was so bad that we were actually going out there and getting our permits to build. So I think we have to be realistic, and I totally get the idea of what you guys are paying, what I'm paying every month. It has to be a very number one priority in anything we do. But once we get the numbers together, once we figure it out, then maybe we can come up with a game plan on how to do this. But don't cut us off yet. Give us the opportunity to show you what's going to cost and what you can get for your buck. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
With that, in 2022, we could be meeting in the DeLuca Selectmen's meeting room.
Luca Baeta.
Gosh.
Well, he'll have to be chairman that year.
Yeah.
Also at 6 o'clock tomorrow, if anyone's interested, you know any builders, there's going to be a meeting at the high school too, a public information meeting on the stretch code and what impact that will have, because that's also going to be on the warrant. Wednesday, what did I say? Oh, excuse me, Wednesday, 6 o'clock at the high school.
7 for the building. Not the builders, the building. So the debt exclusion is a good thing and your amount
Is that the same night as the senior presentation?
What?
6 o'clock. 7.
Thanks, Mike.
And you have the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay.
Pat, Pat, we have minutes?
When we bought our house 10 years ago,
Yeah,
it was $4,800. And last, $9,900.
And for,
It's like an astronaut.
okay, if they're revised. Yep. So is it easier for the next couple weeks if someone here is volunteered to just take notes?
What are we taking
Okay.
notes on?
So,
I'm not good at that, as you've seen.
so,
Aaron's really
so for the next couple of weeks, if someone would like to volunteer to take notes, not to then make them into minutes, but then when Pat gets back, to just hand her the notes from the meetings. And then between the video and the notes, she'll be able to put together minutes.
So I kind of put a shell together from my notes and then go through the video and fill in. So I'm not listening to the video and back.
So Tom's volunteering?
No.
No?
You know how you're exempt from jury duty when you hit 70?
No?
Yeah. When you hit 70, you don't have to
Absolutely
go on
right.
jury
Are
duty.
you 70, Tom?
When we hit 80, we don't have to take minutes.
Yeah.
Me and Paul just discussed it.
You and Paul took a vote, and it was unanimous?
vote.
Mr. Chairman, I will not be in attendance next Monday evening. I have a conflict.
What?
Suddenly, we don't have a quorum. I don't know what happened.
Aaron does a good job of this.
I mean, I say that tongue in cheek, but I really do have to be in New York next Monday.
Go back to the 20.
So, we can make it easier, we can make it hard.
They give another number between 1 and 10.
Pat, how many meetings roughly? 3, 4, 3?
I'll be back by tax day.
And we won't be meeting on the 15th, because that's Patriots Day.
So 3, 4.
Yeah, I would have left yesterday, but I didn't want to stick. to
Because
the
you wanted to do the
I
minutes.
did.
Awesome.
Mr. Chairman, I'll volunteer for April Fool's Day.
Awesome.
Any particular reason?
Is that real, Amy, or just?
April 1st is 2 Mondays
that's
from
a
now,
Monday.
yes.
Thank you, Amy.
It is a Monday.
I'll do one as well.
Next week? Awesome.
Basically.
Thank you, Walter.
Walter, don't make me look bad.
I think the notes and put it on Facebook.
You probably do better than I do.
Yep.
You're just doing my job for me.
Yep.
8th? Fine, I'll do it. On the 8th.
God
Bless you.
That's the last date, right? Just
Right.
feel free to come home early, but if you don't,
No,
I'll do the 8th.
I'll be far away.
Thank you. And next week, I believe, is pretty much water and sewer. Probably the last budgets.
Start going through Mike's recommendations. Sounds good.
Yeah, he should have had that in that shoe. He should be. What he's got is the, you know, the sheet shows the deficit. We don't have a water fund, and the other guy that's running it is empty. Oh, he didn't give us any numbers on free cash. Excise is not up to date because March is when we pay out. Excise could be way up there. True. He said give us an estimate. Everybody's done reading, but I read it on the email. Oh, yeah, you weren't here. That's right. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes, since I already read them online.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as presented for March 11th. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain?
If I'm in the motion-making mood, I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any further questions, comments on that? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Preserve the people over here.
That's right. Past our bedtime.
That was voting.